Years ago when I was younger, there was one thing above all else that I used to hate more than anything. And hate was a strong word for me. Hate, I wasn't really a kid who was an angry kid. But something that made me angry above all else was when I would cry. When I would cry, it would make me upset because I was crying. And then I would get more upset after that because I got upset at myself for crying. And so why, as a kid, am I getting so upset about crying? Because for me, as a kid, to me, crying was a sign of weakness. And whenever I cried, it made me feel like a crybaby, and it made me angry with myself because I felt that as a boy or as a growing into a man, that I wasn't supposed to cry. And it took me until recently for me to realize that that's not true. That having crying does not make you any less of a man, because in that case, what is a man? What is it that defines a man? Is it the XY chromosomes that we have? Does that define what a man is? Just someone that has, do you have the the XY chromosomes in your blood? Not your blood, but in your your genetic code? Is it how masculine you are, how strong and confident you look? Or does it have to do with the ability to care for and to take care of your significant others and people around you? That's the question. For me, historically, I think it has to do with culture. I'm American, so if I were to go outside, and see a guy wearing a skirt, I'd probably think they were gay. I think most people would probably think that. However, the Scottish, their men, is part of their culture to wear skirts, and there's nothing odd about that. There's nothing abnormal about that, and no one would think twice about someone not being a man just because they were wearing a skirt in those cultures, right? So what I'm trying to see so what I'm trying to get here is that there is an odd cultural divide in at least America, and I assume there's probably some other issues in other countries as well, but at least I can always speak for America because I'm American. But I had a conversation with some friends, some college friends that I met a few years ago, and I asked them, do they feel like they can cry as a man? Like, could they? I don't think I hear. It was something along the lines of like, do they feel like they can cry in front of someone else? And their answer was no. Each and every one of them said no. They would not cry in front of another person. And I was like, and I can understand, like, intentionally, like you probably wouldn't like try, and that makes sense to an extent. Like, no one wants to intentionally cry in front of someone, because it's just like most people, not even like girls. Most girls, I don't think they just want to cry in front of people, right? But God specifically, I think most guys don't want to, for just because they don't want to look weak, but they make it think so, and me, I've come to realize that I don't think there's a certain set of emotions that men are supposed to, like, obviously we are supposed to be caretakers, we're supposed to be strong, it's like we're supposed to be strong, and I believe that. I'm not saying that I think men should be weak, right? And but like, it's okay, but I think most men take that as they are never allowed to be weak. Like part of the reason why I never cried or I hated crying as a kid was because I never saw my dad cry. My dad never let me see him ever cry. And and because of TV and movies and stuff like that, and how they, I always thought, dang, I'm not super strong. You know what I mean? I don't look cool. I'm a, and guys on the guys on TV, they don't cry. They don't cry. So I felt like I was. So I felt like I was, was not becoming of a man because because I was cry. And sometimes, yeah, sometimes things I cry about were, you know, weren't really worth crying about. But sometimes but it led to issues as I got older, around middle school, high school, because I wouldn't cry in situations where it's perfectly healthy to, like when my grandfather died. I was the doctor told us that he didn't have much left. He didn't have much time to live. I was like in seventh grade at the time, and so because I wanted to be prepared for the fact of his be prepared for him dying, and and me not being surprised about it because I didn't want to cry. I told myself whenever I found out that he's probably that oh, he was old anyways. He lived a long and good life. You know I shouldn't feel bad or upset about it because it was going to happen anyway. So when he died, I did not, outside of maybe I was sad, but I did not. I don't recall ever crying whenever he died. Right. However, and someone might think, oh, there's nothing wrong with that, right? However, a few months later, when my cousin died, who was he was young and who died in a car accident. He was young. There was nothing. I was caught off guard. I was fully caught off guard by the fact, and there was nothing that there was nothing that could have prepared me for that moment. So whenever that happened, you know, I held it together. I held it together, and I still didn't cry, even at the funeral, with other people, crying and being emotional around me. At 12 years old, I had numbed myself, to that, and I was proud of myself for that. I felt really good, uh, because I did not cry. I did not shed a cheer for him at his funeral because I thought that made me feel like, I chose not to cry for someone I cared about because I thought it would make me less of a man to do so. And I guess I can sleep yet. And I was totally, and I was fine. I was fine, or so I thought, until that night when I went to the bathroom. Uh, I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, and then I just started crying. I started bawling my eyes out, and there was nothing I could do to stop it, and it felt so. It felt so, and it's somebody think that's bad, but it felt so like liberating. Like me being able to be feel that pain and be able to and be able to express that did not make me weak. In fact, it made me stronger and made me more in tune and understand it emotions more. And it bothered me then. Even then I thought, oh, I'm so stupid. I'm so much of a kid because of that. But like those kind of events, when you choose not to express your talk when you choose not to talk to someone, when you choose not to cry, when you choose not to express your feelings in a proper manner, instead of just in a way in a manner that's not just, oh, I'm fine, or I'll just bottle it up. That's not proper. That's not good. That's not. That is more harmful than anything. That's a more harmful way of dealing with your emotions than anything. That is like probably arguably one of the worst things you could possibly do. You know, in regards to expressing your emotions. So and someone still might think that, and some people still might think, oh, you know, I still not gonna cry. That's fine. Even if you don't want to cry for other people to see it, because obviously some people, you know, it's a vulnerable thing. Whenever you're crying, it's very vulnerable, and you know, there's emotions that there's certain parts of people that there's certain parts you don't want to show people, right? That's fine. You can do it because you can do it alone. You can express, you know, you can talk to, you know, you can talk to someone about it. And some guys, and unfortunately a lot of guys don't have that. And, you know, you might have to, you know what I'm saying, just go on a walk and, you know, express and express your anger. Get angry at the world and just like, and just let it out. But don't be angry at yourself for being emotional, because it's natural. You know, there's going to be there's going to be things in life that are unexpected that we are unable to control or see coming. And, you know, our reaction as men is to bottle it up and hold it in, because, you know, we don't feel it, because, you know, it doesn't hurt us, right? But over time it starts to stack up, and it can lead to you doing things that can lead to you, and that can lead to a man reacting uncontrollably and doing something rash and something that they wouldn't have done with a, you know, if they had a clear head. So I don't think, and for even more confirmation that crying does not make you less manly, the perfect man, Jesus Christ, is said, wept. You could find scriptures of him weeping in the Bible, and, you know, if that man was able to cry and feel, and, you know, feel pain for others and to cry, I think that it's fine that I do so as well. Unfortunately, a lot of us as men, we are lonely, and, you know, we don't have others. We may not have, you know, a support system or people around us to care about us. And, you know, I feel for you, but if no one else is going to be able to take care of us, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to be kind to ourselves, you know, because you could eat yourself alive. Oops. You know, your brain will take you down a spiral, and before you know it, you know, you might be contemplating, you know what I mean? We as men, we have to do better with how we treat other men and what we say to other men, because some men feel like they can't do the things that they love or enjoy because it'll make them look bad. Like, for example, like with the example earlier, because I wear a skirt, does that make me less of a man? Does that mean I'm gay? Hell nah, Young Thug did it. The Scottish people do it. I mean, and in some cases it looks hard, right? Because I choose to read books and be literate. Does that mean I'm gay? Because I watch anime. Does that mean I'm a weirdo? Hell no. That's cool now. That's trendy now. Everybody watching anime nowadays. You gotta think about what kind of I like what kind of idea what kind of like propaganda. There's a lot of toxic, you know, propaganda regarding men that we ourselves spread and make it harder for us to be more dynamic and more unique as men. Like think about the most manly, like think about in your head like what are the most manly things that you could think like that what are all the hobbies that typical men have? Cars, sports, and freaking what are you cars and sports? Cars and sports. That might be the two hobbies that, you know, it's like that is like socially acceptable for every every guy to be into. Car, sports, the gym. Sports and gym kind of go hand in hand, but you throw anything else in there, someone might think you're a homosexual. So in some cases we do it to ourselves, man. I just want us as guys to think about, you know, what truly defines a man. You know, how he dresses, how he paints his nails, you know, how how he how he you know how deep his voice is. You know what I mean? You know, the hobby like or is it or is it his character, you know? How strong he is in his, you know, ambition, desires, how he cares about, you know, the people around, like the people around him, his family. To me, that's what makes, you know, man, his ability to provide. And yes, I do think men should be strong. I don't think men should be weak. But at some point, we have all been weak. And I think and it's okay. And I think it's okay to be weak at times. I'm done yapping for today. I'll see y'all tomorrow.